When you look at the dragons, what do you see? It's important. What do you see?
I suppose I see us.
Tell me.
Everyone says Targaryens are closer to gods than to men. But they say that because of our dragons. Without them, we're just like everyone else.
The idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. They're a power man should never have trifled with. One that brought Baelor its doom. If we don't mind our own histories, it will do the same to us. Targaryen must understand this to be king. Or queen.
And welcome to another episode of Where Heartbreak Feels Good. For today, we're back with our show, the wrap-up, where we'll be breaking down everything that happened last night for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, episode 2. Joining me today, as always, for this journey is my egg to my dunk, Evan Harris.
Thank you very much. I assume you said that because, Egg, Evan. But Egg is pretty smart. I loved Egg in this episode. This is another fun episode. And Edgar, I think this is a point where we mentioned this last week, where we're getting shorter episodes. The tone's going to be different. I think, a lot of people give it like the 3 episode shot. Like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to love it after 3 episodes. Funny enough, to start things off here, I recommended the show to my dad, who I watched Game of Thrones with, who watched House of the Dragon with. And I was like, hey, I think you'll like A Night of Seven Kingdoms. So he watched episode 1. He was like, this is cool. I like it. He texted me immediately after episode 2. He was like, that was boring. That was uneventful. I'm like, I completely disagree. But I wonder if like the casual people, not probably the people watching this podcast, not us, but like, I wonder if casuals are going to start liking it, because this is the kind of tone I think we're going to be getting in future episodes, minus like the jousting and the action there. Because I like this tone a lot. It was a simple, short, and sweet episode, but there was still not uneventful, because there's still a lot to break down here. And then especially with the arrival of the Targaryens, things are about to change. So I had a really fun time with this episode, especially as somebody who's like a big fan of like lore and like the basic like thematic tension of this show so far. I'm really liking it. When I say thematic tension, I'm mostly meaning the way people are looking back on Sir Arlen and how that fuels Duncan. It's a really nice, I wouldn't say subtle, but it's a nice small character journey for Duncan, who has a very different look on Sir Arlen, as we knew from episode 1, especially now that we get the Targaryens and other people involved. So I really liked it.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It's funny. I didn't expect for this episode, to have something in common with 28 years later and the Bone Temple. Starting off with the episode. Again, like we talked about it last week, about how all of these flashbacks kind of communicate how Duncan saw Arlen, and whether that was actually, whether it was factual, but whether Arlen was as good of a knight as he thought he was, or it was just like him kind of like romanticizing the idea of a hedge knight. Yeah. So yeah, and then this, like, they keep exploring that in this episode. I mean, like the very last line, one of the last lines of the episode, right, of him being like, I am his legacy, now I need to basically prove myself that I can actually carry it. Yeah, where do you want to start?
Yeah, that was a great last line. But yeah, I think we start off like, the basis for that line with the big elephant in the room with the flashback. That was very funny. I like one of the showrunners who said like he just walked onto set like that. We don't know if it's CGI or real. Very funny. But yeah, as you mentioned, like we're getting these flashbacks here with Duncan basically trying to go from, because that's his main quest, like, RPG style, like what's his main quest? His main quest is to get somebody in this freaking town to vouch for him as a knight to participate in this tourney. So he starts going from, we see it through the audio of the flashbacks, but he's going from person to person, basically describing Arlen's exploits or lack thereof. As we hear the audio, Doug talks about all the things that Arlen has done. Visually, what we're seeing is him slowly dying, withering away, the last vestiges of his, life there, which again run counter to like this heroic spirit that Dunk has conjured in his telling these other lords across Ashtown. I really like that dichotomy in the first couple minutes of the episode.
Yeah, and it's also contrasts what we saw last week, where it was mostly just like the abusive side of Arlen.
Yeah,
And this week we get to see more of his, I guess you could say, chivalry
yeah.
friendship with Dunk. Like them just like hanging out like under the tree while it's raining. Him giving gold to the smoke folk, stuff like that. So yeah, like I I do, how can I put this? I do think that that's what that's the idea that he has of him,
Yes,
and that's what he wants to aspire to. But I like that how everybody keeps basically questioning whether or not he should. Except for
exactly.
one person, we're finally introduced to one of, if not my favorite character of this short story, Baelor Targaryen. He's the hand of the king, the heir to the throne right now. Um, it does happen in a little bit different than in the books.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
Duncan doesn't really. So, from what I remember in the book, it happens as him going to the. I think his name is Plumber, the game master or whatever.
Okay,
Um, he goes up to him. There's these other people in the room with the master of the games. He just starts talking about him wanting to enter into the games, into the tourney, and it's just like him slowly realizing that the other people in the room are royalty, are Baelor and Makar, um, which something that we talked about last week with like the Blackfire rebellions and all of that, and then no longer having dragons. One of
yeah.
the things that we're introduced in the show is the idea that we have to. Well, I guess not in the show. It was also introduced in House of the Dragon, but the idea of having Targaryens without the now iconic like silver hair, like white hair.
I was going to
Um,
mention that because that was very interesting once we start seeing them coming to town. Yeah, like in House of the Dragon, it was a big plot point. Once we got that jumps, our first initial flash forward in House of the Dragon season one, we meet Rhaenyra's kids, and they don't have white hair, and it's a huge controversy with Allison being like, "These kids are not yours," and Damon had to cut somebody's head off and talking ill about his children. It's like it was crazy. So yeah.
yeah, I think your mic, is your mic connected? It sounds a little low.
Oh, a little low. Let me do a check.
Yeah, but while you do that, so yeah, like it is still kind of like a controversy here, but it's for a different reason. The king right now in this time period is Darren II. He was the direct, I guess you could say, direct descendant, heir to the throne after Aegon the Fifth, I believe. No, the fourth, the unworthy, after he passed, and he's the one who legitimized his bastard children, and that's how sort of how the Blackfire Rebellion happened. But one of the key components in that conflict was the fact that Darren II kind of made a active effort to make amends between House Targaryen and House Martell. And he did that by marrying people from his house to House Martell. So that explains why some of Darren II's children, as you see with Baelor, why they have like the darker hair. Um, I believe in the book, they're also described as like they're having like also like darker skin, because like the mother is from Dorne. But yeah, like I like that how it plays out in the book, because again it goes back to the idea that the Targaryens have to prove themselves worthy of being the rulers of seven kingdoms. They no longer have dragons, and now also they no longer have the features that a lot of people associate with the Targaryens, like the silver hair, or as it is in the books, like the purple eyes. So we don't really get that in the show. In the show is much more direct. Dunk just kind of like follows them into a room and just starts talking to them, which is again like that's probably my favorite scene of the show. And even though there's like all of these controversies about the looks of the Targaryens and they're not having dragons anymore, I love how right from the get go you get the sense that everybody in the realm really does like and respect Baelor. Even the way that they're like introduced to like Ashford, it's like here's
Exactly.
Baelor Targaryen, Breakspear, the hand of the king, blah blah blah, blah and his brother. And like right from that moment you like get the dynamic between the two, and it's really really cool. I think the two actors are nailing the bond between those two characters.
100%. Like I really liked the whole arrival sequence in general. But before I go into that, like I agree with you. Like I really like the subtle, like because they don't mention it, right? Baelor just walks into town, and us as the audience has to piece together. Like, wait a minute, this guy doesn't have white hair, but he's the heir presumptive to the king. It's very interesting here. But yeah, like I read up somewhere, and as you mentioned, yeah, the whole Dorne Martell scenario is very interesting. These Targaryens, they're doing PR, going to tourneys. They have to marry into other people. It's like, it's crazy. It's like, it's not as easy as when you had dragons just a couple hundred years ago. Yeah, as you walk into town, I also liked how, we see Dunk and Egg. We get the scene from the trailer where Egg is like, the whole barking scene is very funny. But yeah, the Targaryens roll into town and Egg shies away. He was like, you know what? I think I will
I'm out of here.
Camp. I'm out of here. That like, okay, cool. Yeah, get out of here, kid.
Very oblivious. Yeah.
Very oblivious. I love him. But yeah, I love watching their relationship develop. I'll talk about that at the end of the episode. But yeah, the Targaryens arrive, and as you mentioned it, yeah, it's kind of like I saw some memes about the Daenerys and Jon Snow meeting when Daenerys has all these titles, and it's like, oh, this is Jon Snow. It's like same thing with Baelor. Everybody like the crowd goes wild with Baelor. Then it's like, oh, and then there's Maekar. Cool. Yeah.
His
like,
brother.
Oh, his brother. And also this continues the tradition for the Targaryens of like the younger brother looking like the older brother. The other guy with white hair looks to be older than Baelor. It reminded me of House of the Dragon where Aegon looks way younger than what's his name? Aemon, the guy with the eye patch.
Aemon, yeah.
Aemon looks like the older brother, but he's like the younger brother to Aegon, which is just very funny. So thank you, Targaryens, for making it confusing for everybody in the show. But yeah, Baelor seems like a cool guy. We'll get into it. I like his meeting with Duncan there too, very much. My favorite scene in the show, in the episode. But before that, we also get Dunk encountering
Prince
there's a lot
Aerion.
of names. Aerion, yeah. I have a list of names. Baelor, Maekar, Aerion, and Valar. Was Valar in the parade coming into town?
Maybe they didn't really get a good.
But
look.
he's definitely at the end of the episode. Valar is the one who is fighting in the opening joust.
Yeah, he's Baelor's son.
Baelor's son, who isn't missing. We'll get about that with Maekar. Is Aerion one of Maekar's sons?
Yeah, he would be, I believe, the middle child. Yeah.
Middle child. Okay. So Aerion is one of Maekar's sons. We learn later on that Maekar has 2 children missing. He has, probably know more than me.
Darren the Drunken,
and Aegon. Yeah, Darren the Drunken and Aegon. Darren the Drunken, who I think, who we definitely saw last week. Getting drunk
at the end. Yeah,
getting super drunk at the end. And I think Baelor mentioned, like, not really surprising. They're supposed to be here before us. We got here. We can't find them. So hopefully they're not dead, as Dunk says.
Let me ask you this. What do you make of Aerion so far, just from that one scene that he has?
Jalen and I were like, okay, so this is the instant rival, right? Like, this is every fictional story where somebody rough and tough comes. It's like when somebody goes to like a new high school or a new college, like the person who immediately disparages the main character is like going to be like the main rival. And we kind of got that a little bit in like the weeks to come last week. But it looks like Aerion is like, he's like, oh, you're like, fetch my horse for me. He's like, I'm not that person. He's like, oh, well, do this for me. He's like, I'm also not that person. Aerion. Sorry to burst your bubble there, but yeah, he looks to be kind of like he's giving off like Aemond, like holier than thou. Probably can put his money where his mouth is. He can probably be very athletic. We'll see where that happens. But yeah, he seems to be like Dunk's main rival, if I had to guess. At least the main one being antagonistic to Dunk from the jump. While everybody else is just like Baelor is nice to him, Maekar is just scowling at him. So Aerion seems to have the most antagonism towards Dunk. That was my immediate. And he just looked the part, dude. He's just like constantly like that rich boy, I'm famous and I know it kind of attitude. Very interesting.
Yeah. I also love well, before I say that, I wonder if we're gonna see a certain scene with Aerion in episode 3. There's something that he does during the tourney that is very similar to something that Daemon does in season 1 of House of the Dragon, even though Daemon doesn't do what he does in the show, in the books. So they kind of like, they gave him that part to Daemon.
I remember. Yeah.
It's kind of to like make him seem like unlikable from evil. The get-go. No. I would say maybe like more evil. And with Aerion, he does that in the book, but I'm curious if they're gonna skip it entirely since they already kind of adapted it into another character, or if they'll like portray it in some way next week maybe. Okay. But yeah, and then after that we have the scene with the Kingsguard. Oh
yeah, but I like the scene with the Kingsguard. I really like this armor. Like it was really like bright and definitely very different from the other Kingsguard we've seen before.
Some of the probably the coolest Kingsguard armor that we've seen in this universe so far, and it's because that's pretty much how they look in the books. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really white. It gives like high fantasy, like these high, in other universes, like high elven armor, but it looks like very white and sparkly and very, very clean and cool. I just like how we've seen so many different Kingsguard armors over the course of the show, going from like season 1 of Game of Thrones with the Jaime Lannister all the way to now. Like it's a huge evolution going from Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, years, like very different.
I don't know if it's like maybe like a happy accident or purposeful, but I do like that a lot of the armor in the show so far, and we can also talk about it once we get to the tourney at the end of the episode with the other houses, but specifically right now with like the Targaryens and the Kingsguard. I like how, what's the word, like flamboyant, how like almost like over exaggerated or like the sign or like super shiny all of their armor is compared to like, let's say, House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, because again, this would be the time where the Targaryens would be trying to impress people with like the little things that they have left of like to impress people. And that is communicated also like in the way that they're dressed, and obviously the Kingsguard are like, again, they're the best that they've looked in any of the shows so far.
Yeah, like I said, it's also been like a very slow decline to what we get in Game of Thrones, where everything has like magic has waned, the power of like the king and stuff have waned, so like the armor looks a little bit drained from what it used to be exactly. But yeah, so we get the cool Kingsguard stuff, and the Kingsguard conversation is very funny, especially in more context later in the episode. But yeah, it's like, oh, you're lowborn, that's just Aerion, and one of the Kingsguard, I forget his name, but he mentions how, I used to be a crabber. And Dunk's like, oh, how did you go from being a crabber to where you are now? He was like, same way I ended up being a crabber. It's like, initially I'm just like, oh, so you just like put on your bootstraps, worked hard, whatever, and got to where you need to be. Fast forward to the end of the episode. Yeah.
Nepotism. But I also like it that he's not trying to be douchey. Like he's trying to like encourage Dunk to just like, again, going back to what we were saying last week of like having all of these like certain people that come in his life, trying to like encourage him to just try at least. And that's what it very much feels like in this scene also, even though like he is kind of like messing with him a little bit, but like he's also being genuine, kind of like Lionel last week.
Yeah, like he's being genuine. He's like, hey, he's not disparaging him at all, unlike Arian. But he's also omitting a large part of the truth, which is just very funny. I love Egg's expression at the end of the episode. He's just like, what? Like Egg's expressions are just peak comedy. He's like, no, that's not the case. Egg, how do you know so much about this random Kingsguard person? How do you know he's part of nobility in Flea Bottom, wherever that was?
He read the wiki.
He read the wiki. Egg's very knowledgeable about all these Kingsguard and all these knights. But yeah, where are we at right now?
That's when we go to the scene with Baelor where he sees like the door open and just walks in. Something that I really like about that scene also, you really do get a sense that Baelor is very different from most, if not all, the Targaryens that we've seen throughout these shows so far, whether it's Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. Very educated man, very respected and respectful towards other people. But like there's also like there's still that hint of like of an ego of he takes pride of the fact that he knows so much about like all of these different houses and even like the smoke. But like again, like I don't think it comes from a bad place, but it's again like there's still like that sense of ego from him.
Like why wouldn't he? He's like the the eldest son. Like of course you get eldest son vibe from him, especially when Dunk mentions like not that like you're soon to be king, but and then like hey thank you very much you'll be a great ruler one of these days and Baelor was like hopefully not too soon, but like he's happy to hear that from Duncan though, and he's happy to hear that like I am well liked, thank you for complimenting me. He gives like that very much an eldest son vibes. But yeah, I like Baelor. Would you compare him? Is it too much to say he's like Daemon's brother, the OG king from House of the Dragon?
Viserys.
Viserys wasn't really liked though, right? Like everybody knew Viserys was getting manipulated, right? Or is that just an audience?
Well, I think people just saw him as weak, also because he didn't have a male heir at the beginning of the show, at least.
Got it. Okay.
I would say maybe he would be like a mix of both, of the warrior and the brains, even though Viserys like it's not that he was like dumb, but he was like again very easily manipulated by other people, especially like people by like Otto or Alicent. And it was either him being like manipulated or him just letting things fly when he should have like clearly had like a stronger hand on things around him. So I would say the warrior side of Daemon is definitely in there with, I mean, I would say his father, like Darren II, is pretty smart for the most part.
Baelor is like a warrior. He fought in the Blackfire shit.
Yeah. So one of the things that one of the things that there's so many reasons why the Blackfire Rebellion like kickstarted, but like one of the I guess like smaller reasons, during a tourney, he went against Daemon Blackfire. And he won that tourney against his I believe it would be like uncle, and Daemon got really like butthurt about it, and that's where he got the name Breakspear from, that entire thing in the tourney.
Oh, that's cool. That's a really awesome.
It's a cool nickname.
Baelor Breakspear. Yo, if I'm walking out of the tourney, people start calling me that, I'm like, wait. Put that on everything, guys. Put that on everything. I'm keeping it. I'm rolling with it.
PR, baby.
PR, baby. Let's go. I love how legends come to be and nicknames come to be in this show. It's very, very funny and cool. But yeah, it just in general, I like that it's so funny and great writing from George that like a Targaryen is the one to give Dunk permission. Dunk goes to all these people last week, at the beginning of this week. Baelor finally grants him like, hey, I'll vouch for Sir Arlen. I remember him. the 7 maces or versus the 4, I forget, during their fight. They said they fought at Dragonstone, right? That's the house of the Dragon. Dragonstone's the one where
no, I think
he.
Yeah. I think he said King's Landing, like a tourney.
Or King's Landing. Okay. Yeah. What was the Dragonstone part? I had Dragonstone in my notes somewhere.
I forgot.
But either way, Baelor recognized Sir Arlen, and it's just so funny because again, from a visual perspective, Aerion is giving like antagonistic, like very much antagonistic for Dunk, but then Baelor is the one giving benevolence and recognition for Dunk, and those two things are going to clash, and it's because Baelor granted him a Targaryen granted him that permission in the first place. It's very much funny how like Dunk's slow and steady rise to power, as we mentioned last week, how it all starts from a Targaryen, from Baelor. So thank you, Baelor. So it was a very interesting reference. Does Baelor mention dragons? He also mentioned like Rhaenys, and some other people. I can tell if those are dragons or just his siblings or something.
Yeah, I think he mentions Aerys and Rhaegal.
Yeah, are those dragons?
No, those are siblings. So
siblings, okay.
Yeah, the firstborn, I believe, is Baelor. Then Aerys, the first. Then Rhaegal, and the younger brother is Maekar.
Okay, is Rhaegal one of Daenerys' dragons? Also called Rhaegal? Am I going crazy?
Rhaegar with an R.
Rhaegar with an R.
But that's her brother, which she then renames it to a dragon with an L instead of an R. So that's what you're thinking of.
George, I'm going to kill this man. Thank God I have Edgar the Encyclopedia over here. That's Edgar's nickname. You don't get Breakspear. You get Edgar.
Maybe I am the egg of this.
Maybe. Very funny, but yeah, just in general, very good interaction. And yeah, like I mentioned, Maekar is giving very much like scowling, especially when Dunk mentions like, thank you so much. Hopefully your sons end up alive or whatever. And Maekar is like, like that's like a weird kind of like Dunk doesn't mean anything by it. He's Dunk. Hard as a wall, brick wall, whatever. But then like it just reads really, really bad. But yeah, I wonder when we are going to see Daeron again. He was drunk last time, talking about dreams last time, and then Egg just like left. So then we got Dunk meets Tanselle again because he needs to go to Tanselle because before he leaves, Baelor was like, okay, I gave you permission, but that's not the end of your quest yet. You still need a sigil, coat of arms, because you're not blood related to Sir Arlen, right? He's like, no, not really. So he's like, well, you need to get your own crest, right? Your own crest, sigil, and coat of arms, your own, armor. So this is where Dunk goes for the rest of the episode. And he meets Tanselle again, very hot puppeteer. Puppeteer? Very cool woman. I like to play. I have them in quotes here. All men are fools and all men are knights. Just sums up the entire series in general, but the show as well. Very cool interaction. I love Dunk just trying to be very awkward, very his flirt game isn't the best, and I love how Egg is like, yeah, it wasn't great there. Great report.
Yeah, that entire interaction is also another example of things that happen in the book that are more internal, that they give some of those lines to Egg.
Okay, cool.
Like when he's like saying like, oh, you're just what is it? You're just right for, and then he like trails off. He was like thinking like, oh, you're just right for like kissing. That's what he was thinking in that moment, because he wouldn't have to like kneel down for that. But like they gave that line to Eggs of the Puppets. It's just in the books, it's just him like kind of like spitballing and like coming up with something, and like he eventually just has puppets, which tells you a lot about his character, both in the show and in the book. But they gave that line to Egg, which again, it's the dynamic of Egg being almost like a old soul trapped in this little boy.
For sure, that's what it's giving. Like Dunk seems so immature and new to the world compared to Egg, even though Egg is like, years younger than Dunk, he comes across more mature, more knowledgeable, both in terms of like people with status and just like regular conversations. Like, hey, no, that conversation didn't go well. That wasn't great. I mean, not bad, but it was just like, your flirt game needs some work, Betty. So it's very cool seeing them like, it's because again, it's getting older brother, younger brother vibes a little bit already in episode 2. Not so much father and son. But it's very cool.
Yeah.
But then they mentioned like I love this part of the episode too, where okay, we meet Tanselle, we saw her, puppeteer show, her play, but now I need you to. He's going to pay her to like put some symbols onto his crest. What should it be? And Dunk's kind of like I didn't think I'd get this far. I have no idea. But Egg is the one who really pushes for like the elm tree. I forget which one it was, but like they have the elm tree, the sunset, and like the red shooting star, which is really cool. It just reminds me, and I'm probably Dunk, like humble beginnings. Like this is where they began, and it just so happened to be the same moments that he was with Egg as well. So it's a new beginning for both Dunk and Egg in this moment.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of the things that are happening in the show so far are like very faithful to the book, but also like out of order.
Okay.
In the sense that I believe after that scene, we see him like kind of like going through town. Well, after that scene is the Lionel stuff, but
Good old
eventually,
Lionel.
yeah. But then later, like at night, he's like going through the market, and like he eventually meets like the blacksmith to talk about like armor and getting new equipment, basically. That happens very early on in the book. So that's like one of the things that he does like on day 2 of him arriving
wow.
to Ashford. It happens basically the exact same way, but it happens just much earlier. And I believe he does that first before he even asks Tanselle about painting the shield.
Interesting.
But yeah, part of me almost wonders if they shot it to be more in order of the book, and then they just decided to maybe like switch it around in post, like during like the edit. Because like I don't know if you noticed, but like, and again, like this is just me nitpicking, but during that scene when he's like asking about how much it costs for the armor, he has the shield back on, but obviously that he had already given the shield to Tanselle.
Oh wow! Yeah, it's on his back, right?
Yeah. I think I don't know if they did it digitally, where they like remove the sigil of the shield. It's just like a blank shield. But yeah, like again, like not a big deal. But again, like so far I'm liking how they're playing with time and like doing a different structure for the story.
For sure, you could argue like that scene of him talking to the armorer at night is the same exact like setting as the nighttime sequence in last week's episode where he ran into a Manfred, whatever the other guy who was supposed to know, so Arlen. You could have had that scene, then that scene, whatever, and you wouldn't have noticed anything different. But then they put it in this week's episode, just space and time. Unless this week's episode would have been 15 minutes long or 20 minutes long. I think it was only like 28 minutes long, this episode.
Yeah, it's funny. Like these episodes are very short, but like a lot happens in them. Maybe not as much as like House of the Dragon, but like they're still like they have a good amount.
Exactly. Like you can't skip this episode because like Baelor giving him permission is huge. Like this is what Dunk needs to enter the tourney, or else you start episode 3 being like, okay, wait, now he's an attorney. What I missed? But like the Targaryens coming into town changes the landscape of everything because now we have our main characters at play here. But yeah, this was very sad. So after he gives like the crest, I'll talk about the armor scene. Then we'll go back to Lionel. But for the armor sequence, it's very sad. He has to say goodbye to Sweetfoot here to pay for like refitting Sir Arlen's armor, so it fits Dunk, of course. And it's very sad because he needs some coin, and he says, hopefully, once I get enough money, hopefully once after I win, I can buy you back Sweetfoot. So hopefully that's like the last scene of the series or of the season. He wins the tourney and he buys back Sweetfoot. See you in season 2. Let's go. That's my goal.
It's funny because in the book, you're like in his head, and he's like rationing with himself and kind of complaining to himself. It's like, I'm gonna buy this horse for basically a penny for nothing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get just enough to pay for the armor, but I'm basically giving her for less than she's worth. And if I buy her back, they're gonna probably charge me double of what I just of what they just gave me.
It's like going to GameStop,
Going to games.
selling the game for like $5, and they put it on like, hey, now this is $55. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it makes no sense. But yeah.
Yeah,
Very
but yeah, like that entire scene, it's very sweet, and again, it goes back to Duncan's character of both being naive, but also just being like such a genuine man, in the sense that not only does he say that to the horse of like, oh, I'll buy you back once I win, but also he just leaves extra money with the caretaker. Oh, like buy her some, like, what he said, like some apples or something like that.
Yeah.
For like dinner, which again,
Some
very
oops,
genuine
some
thing.
apples.
Yeah, very genuine thing to do, but also realistically would a person in Westeros actually do that and pay for like a horse's like meal? Like, no, they'll probably keep it for themselves.
Yeah, that's their meal. That's their oatmeal. That's their, yeah. It's like shit. But yeah, very sweet scene, very sad scene. To see Dunk, another part of Sir Arlen's legacy going away there. But then, yeah, let's go back to after the crest sequence, after the whole Tanselle scene. We meet Sir Lionel again, Lionel Baratheon. And they're doing a tug of war contest. And I love these bits in the show. Very low stakes, very just simple, fun, bonding scene between Dunk, Egg, and Lionel all together. Very fun sequence when Dunk's like hard carrying his side of the tug of war contest, and then Lionel just like gets up and just starts to relax and do something before coming back. It was just very cool, very chill. I'm loving Lionel. Like, he's, again, one of the most effortlessly cool characters on the show. He's so good.
Yeah, like I don't think I've mentioned this to you, but recently I like started rewatching Game of Thrones. Right now I'm in season 1, and like all of this just reminds me of all of this reminds me of like the tourney for the Hand of the King for Ned, and like how they're like jousting like the mountain against
oh yeah, it's like episode 4 or something, right? 3 or 4,
4 or 5, yeah. But yeah, it reminds me to like all of that stuff, of just like just letting the characters breathe in the world. They're like not even like doing much, but again, you're getting the time to spend with them, and it even though like it might feel like it's like filler, quote unquote filler, it will become important because you are seeing that Duncan is earning the respect of others. I mean, he already earned the respect of Lionel, but like that relationship is still like developing and is becoming stronger, and that will be very important by the time we get to like the finale.
Exactly. And like, everybody, because Lionel's involved here, everybody in town's watching this, all these men do it. And they're watching Dunk, like, again, be in the back of the tug of war contest, leading them to victory. Hooray, with the egg on his shoulder, Lionel, like, right there with them, like, cheering him on. Like, the whole town's there. So, again, like you said, like, it's giving him positive respect and notoriety there around town before the tourney even begins. But speaking of the tourney, this is where we fast forward. He refitted his armor, or paying a guy to do so. Just a very nice armor, by the way. Like, we're coming across this show a lot of people who are either arrogant, but this guy, he said, didn't Dunk just like barely have enough to give it to pay for it or whatever? To me, it seemed like he was doing Dunk like a favor. And he was gonna like rent him the armor, like he's renting a tuxedo. He's like, hey, this is good for like a day or two or whatever. So you better win, Dunk. But then we get the opening joust, and similar to last week, like these jousting sequences look great. Like, you just rewatched season 1 of Game of Thrones. Could you tell the difference between this joust and the joust we get in 2012, wherever season 1 Game of Thrones came out? Like,
like we mentioned it last week, the action just feels like more dynamic. There's more fluidity to it. Also, maybe a little bit less realistic than what we're used to with this show. But again, like it's a fantasy show. Like
Mhm.
you should be allowed to be a little bit more extravagant, I think. Like there's that moment, I think it might have been a member of House Baratheon. I don't remember what, but there's one of the knights on the floor. There's like a horse, like an empty horse running towards them. It kind of that does like that Legolas maneuver where he like holds like one arm and then just like jumps back in.
Yeah, like
Very cool.
yeah, like
Yeah,
you weigh so much with that armor on, you can't just like one hand somebody on top of
yeah,
your horse. Yeah, you'll be like ah,
yeah.
yeah. It
But
doesn't
again,
look as
like
cool on TV. Yeah,
yeah, but well, as we mentioned earlier with the Kingsguard, I fucking love that I can tell the difference between all of the houses.
yeah, for
Everybody
sure.
has like different like color. The Tullys with the red and blue, green for the Tyrells, all black for the Targaryens with the red sigil. Like this is what I've been wanting. Like again, it's a very simple thing, but I love it.
Especially during nighttime, right? You know, we talk about in TV and movies nowadays where you can hardly see what's going on during nighttime shoots. This one was shot with a lot of, I think, just like a lot of natural lighting, and it was still very visible. Like we get introduced here this nighttime sequence to Valar Targaryen in his all black armor, and we see him going. He's pretty victorious here at this opening test, right? Just from what I can see, pretty doing decently well. Yeah, but just a lot of chaos and a lot of houses, but it was still very manageable and interesting and engaging to watch, even if it was all shot at night. This isn't like the long night in Game of Thrones. It was very, very, very cool to see here. And what I liked most of all was, or two things here I want to note. Egg requests to sit, sit on top of Dunk's shoulder to see what's going on during the joust. Isn't he supposed to be scared someone's going to spot him? Like he was so nervous to get out of there when the Targaryens arrived, and then now he's just like high up initially. So like later on, he requests him to sit back down, but it was just very interesting. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be hiding right now?
Yeah.
Um,
There's
whatever.
two things that happen that are very interesting that are similar for both Duncan and Egg in this scene. Because I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's like a very brief moment where all of these knights are like breaking their lances or whatever,
Yeah.
and their squires are like picking up a new one and giving it to them, and Egg sees this, and he mentioned something earlier in the episode before the Lionel scene about how he wishes to be a knight, but everybody thinks that he's too puny or something like that. He
Too
mentioned
short, scrawny.
too short, yeah. So that like kind of like comes back to that moment of him seeing all of these squires um doing the things that they're doing, like handling all of these like very heavy pieces of equipment, and him probably thinking like, oh, like can I even do that? Like if I'm asked to do it, which I probably will if this guy enters the tourney.
Yeah.
So there's that level of nervousness from him, and then for Duncan is him like realizing like it suddenly becomes real. It's no longer about, oh, let me see if I can even get in. Like, no, now you're in, and now you're seeing the brutality, even if they're not like necessarily killing each other, they're just like hitting each other. But it's still like, you know, pretty violent. And it's that like sense of fear, but also
Yep.
responsibility of living up to the legacy that he thinks Sir Arlen has, which he then later again says in the last scene of the episode, back at the tree with the egg. But I again like I love how the show is like handling both Egg and Duncan, and they're like kind of like in this parallel journey, even though they're like in different positions and both have like both are like on different levels of knowledge about the realm.
Exactly. Duncan's feeling a lot of like what I got from that scene was exactly what you mentioned: anxiety, pressure, fear. Because people aren't getting their heads cut off. People aren't dying, blood isn't going everywhere. But you see horses running full speed at you, spears getting broken, wood going everywhere, people barely surviving. Again, these horses, these crashes, all this chaos. And Dunk's like, I haven't done anything like this in my life. Can I really do this? That's kind of I think what he's thinking there. And yeah, like you mentioned, he has this ideal version of Sir Arlen. So does he think he can live up to that? On top of people already making fun of Sir Arlen. So maybe Sir Arlen wasn't even like that. So there's a lot of people or a lot of things running around in Dunk's mind. But most of all, yeah, like it's just simply pressure. How is he going to stop, or how is he going to put his own self in that situation? Is he going to do right? But yeah, that is very interesting what you mentioned for Egg, in terms of Egg possibly being the one to, like, you know, refit Dunk during the joust with his own like spears and jousting equipment. It reminds me kind of like NASCAR, where you go to the pit stop, like, can that do it quick enough? Can you do it safely enough? We'll see what happens here. But yeah, it's a lot of dual fears and dual pressures going on with these characters, leading into that final scene where, respectfully, from Duncan's perspective, I really love how Dunk's like, you know, I heard at the beginning of the episode, like I heard people making fun of Sir Arlen. Maybe he wasn't, you know, the most ruthless of knights or whatever. Maybe he wasn't the most skilled. Maybe he did have a lot of flaws with him. We saw last week he was slapping Dunk. This week he was just like, you know, singing about, you know, having sex and all that kind of stuff and slowly dying. But at the end of the day, he took Dunk in. He gave him a home. He gave him shelter. He gave him adventure. And I think that's very much a sticking point for Dunk, who wants to continue Sir Arlen's legacy. He's committing fully now to Sir Arlen's legacy, despite how flawed it might have been, because it wasn't for Duncan. And that's very commendable, to recognize how your elders, whether it's your parents, people looking over you, might not be these perfect people, but you still want to continue their legacy because of how they meant to you specifically. And I really like that. I also think it's very, I don't know, maybe I'm stretching, but maybe this could be a very interesting thing once we learn more about Egg as well. Because we see just from Dunk's relation or dynamic with Aerion and from some of the other nobles who are very rude to him, because they can be, because, you know, they were raised in nobility, they were raised in birth. But I'm curious to see how Egg, somebody who's getting just a taste of what the life is like from Dunk's perspective, how that would change Egg, as Egg, you know, furthers his adventures with Dunk, how that changed Egg for the better. So it's a very interesting thing to think about moving forward.
And I think we've covered everything. I think.
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, unless there's a post-credit scene that I don't know about. Yeah, next week's episode looks pretty interesting. Again, it seems to be, you know, people putting their armor on, putting their suits on. So I think we might get a big joust with Dunk participating as early as next week, maybe. So I'm curious.
Yeah. And one last thing that I gotta note, man, that track that plays in the credits.
Wow. I'm telling y'all, like, episode 1 was great. Episode 2 is equally as great. I'm not skipping these Dan Romer scores. They're hidden. I can't wait for this OST to land on Apple or whatever, so I can just listen to the soundtrack while I'm reading, because it feels very cozy, dog. Like, it's cozy. It's nice, you know, because the episode ends with him at a campfire, similar to last week's episode. I wonder if every episode is just going to end at a campfire. I would love that.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Yeah.
I would love that. That'd be pretty baller. But just like every episode ends at a campfire. Good night, Dunk. Good night, Egg. Next adventure, next episode. Because these tracks at the end, it just feels like you're going to sleep by the campfire, hearing a great track play in your ear. It's very cozy. It's very warm. I'm loving it. I'm loving the score. I'm loving the score for this episode, for this series. I know people were worried because, like, you know, Ramin Djawadi is like synonymous with this universe, but Dan Romer has come in and he's doing a good job.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Final thoughts. I'm liking this. Again, if you think this is uneventful by now, this might not be the show for you, but always give it a third episode try. There's a lot to tackle here. You know, Targaryens are coming to town, and there's a lot of subtle world building, as Edgar talked about, with like just the hair color alone from these are Targaryens, setting up the stage and the cause of this tourney and the state of the world so far. But you guys can find me on Twitter, Harris EV9. Talking all things, you know, A Night of Seven Kingdoms, awards, movie awards. Check out, if people have not checked out our last week, we did 2 episodes of award predictions. our own personal awards from the movies of 2025. And we were there live, Edgar, 5 a.m. for for the Oscar announcements. A lot of great surprises there. Check out all those videos. Tomorrow, I'll be breaking down the finale of Percy Jackson season 2 over at my other channel with Nathan Rojas, as well as last week's episode of The Pit, which is also doing good season 2. So yeah, again, Harris EV9.
Yeah. Final thoughts for me. Cannot wait to see more of Baelor and the interactions that he may or may not have with other characters. I don't believe he has like that many moments in the novel with Lionel, but that's just one opportunity where I would love for the show to like at least give me one scene between the two, like this like very silly, unserious man paired with like this scholar of House Targaryen. Like, what would that happen between the two? I would love that.
I would love that. You're right. Those two characters, they gotta meet up. The dunk in the middle.
Dunk in the middle, no, not knowing what the hell they're talking about.
Yes.
But yeah, you can find me at EDG or TEG, social media. You can find my written work at Loud and Clear Reviews in the Cinema Spot. You can find this podcast at WHFG Podcast. And like Evan said, go check out some of the videos that we put out last week, like our Oscar reaction for the nominations for this year's Academy Awards. What else? What else did we did last week? We've done a lot. We've done like I think this month has been the most that we've ever done for this channel.
Only thing we haven't done is like ranking.
It's that thing is about to be like over a year since we've done one.
That's
if not, yeah, I don't know what. Josh, lock in, please. But yeah, we'll see you on the next one next week for episode 3, and we will see you soon, hopefully for monthly recap of January for what we watch in January. So yeah, see you on the next one.